Hello, this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett, and we are rolling to the chicken races. So, put another log on the fire. Cook me up some bacon and some beans. Put another log on the fire. Pour me another cup of tea. Put another log on the fire, and we'll go down the trail of history. Well, we are in history now. We have rolled into a National Historic Site called Fort St. James, just off the Yellowhead Highway, about a half hour north of Vanderhoof, British Columbia. Originally built as a Northwest Company trading post, it was taken over by the Hudson Bay Company in those pioneer days when British Columbia was called New Caledonia. And the capital of New Caledonia was right here at Fort St. James. I should clarify how Canadians use the word fort. Fort in this country is not meant so much as a military fort. It's more of a trading post in historical times during the fur trade era. For example, Fort Edmonton, or Fort Capel, or Fort Saskatchewan, or Fort St. James here. They were not military forts. They were trading posts. So again, in Canada, in the Canadian context, Canada was never at a military war against its indigenous people. So they were not military forts, they were trading posts. You have to stay around for the chicken races that are coming up. They're great. Win some money. They have these landmark Adirondack chairs like you see in all national parks and national historic sites. It is just an experience to sit in them and have a relaxing conversation. The Carriere First Nations people here are part of the Dene First Nation that live across northern British Columbia and the Yukon, and are culturally and linguistically related to the Apache and Navajo Indians of Arizona and the southwestern U.S. The theory is that some of these people migrated southward centuries ago. The fort still has a chicken and a cow or two and a planted garden. In the old days, these supplies for workers in the fur trade were needed. And there was always a breeze coming off the lake. The racing chickens are in the paddock. Even the diner is called a racetrack name, the home stretch. They are rounding up the chickens and the ducks for the races. Let's open this old-time wood latch and get into the chicken yard. Here's the racetrack. Are we ready? Here we go! I bet on that near one there, dead last. I expect I'll do better in this race here. Here they come! Here they come! They're getting a little bit of encouragement. Come on! Come on! Run! Run! Oh, I bet on the white one. Oh, I bet on the wrong white one. Back in the day, they played games like croquet and horseshoes and tug of war with the rope. Traded goods were transported to other communities in canoes, Red River carts, and wagons. The goods brought in were things like these traps, various kinds of grinders, and all sorts of household items, like these tubs and utensils and wood spoons, metal spoons, a butter churn here, another kind of a churn, and all kinds of pots and pans and ropes. Utensils again, a cream separator separating the milk from the cream, a wash tub and a washboard, various brushes, kerosene lamps, and of course the famous Hudson Bay blanket that came in different colors. Attendants in the buildings explained things and answered your questions. Beaver was the high-demand fur. The coarser fur of the beaver pelt was less desirable for making British hats and women's fancy stoles than the soft hairs of the pelt. Dried beaver scent glands lure beavers into traps. And did you know that some of the scent from these scent glands are still used in very expensive perfume today? All kinds of pelts are on display. Beaver, coyote, lynx, otter, martens, and muskrats, as well as ermine or weasel and bear.
So this is just a common red fox. This is a cross fox because of the cross on its back. And 1 in 10 foxes have come out silver. European women didn't realize that that they were wearing skunk. They would actually dye the white hair black and sell it as a Russian sable fur. Oh. So high society women were walking around with skunks on their head. This guy was captured. I always bug the kids. You can use it as a sleeping bag, but I wouldn't want to come in the other end.
The fur pelts were tightly packed in marked bags. The 96 on this bag meant that it weighed 96 pounds. The HB said it was the property of the Hudson Bay Company. The SL meant that it came from the area of Stuart Lake, and so on. This was the remains of an old canoe lying on the ground. And this design of many early buildings of the fur trade era originally came from French settlers in eastern Canada. Sometimes we kind of forget how things once were. For example, smoking is not very fashionable today. But at one time, back in the fur trade days, it was a very fashionable, common kind of thing to either smoke or chew tobacco. The smoking pipe in the foreground is a clay pipe, and the other one is a corncob pipe. Both kinds were popular back then. Listen to what one of the hosts at the fort told us about smoking and chewing tobacco in those times.
This is what they call a twist of tobacco, and it was for smoking. And they would just take their knife, cut off a little piece, put it into their pipe, down in there, or they would put the whole thing in there, just like that, and smoke it like that. And you'd see them walking around with this sticking out of their pipe. This is a men's pipe, corn cob, and this is a lady's pipe, made out of clay. And all the ladies smoked too, and you'd see them like this, sitting around talking, smoking their pipes. And then they just keep pushing it down as it burned.
Let's hear about some ways that you could buy chewing tobacco. Not smoking tobacco, but chewing tobacco.
Other folks like to chew their tobacco. They didn't want to smoke it, they wanted to chew it. So they had this product. And this was considered to be the first health food. Believe it or not, everyone chewed tobacco because it was just tobacco and molasses. None of those chemicals that they have in tobacco today. So everyone considered this health food because tobacco plant is a very healthy plant.
You will hear the attendant talk about 3 different ways that you could buy chewing tobacco. You could buy a plug of chewing tobacco, or you could buy a slice of it, or you could buy a chaw of chewing tobacco. Now the question is, as you listen to the attendant, which way would be the least desirable way for you to buy chewing tobacco if you lived back in those days? Okay? The least desirable way. Let's hear what he says.
You could purchase this 3 different ways. You could buy the whole piece, which was called a plug of tobacco, or you could put it into this machine here called a guillotine and cut off a slice of tobacco and take that home. Or the third way you could purchase it is you could buy what's called a chaw of tobacco. A chaw of tobacco was I would just hand it to you and you would take a bite off the piece of tobacco, the plug, hand it to the next person, they would take a bite, next person. So you wouldn't want to be too far down the line because it got pretty slobbery near the end. So yeah, that's the story of the tobacco, how they purchased it here.
What do you think about that buying chewing tobacco by that chaw of tobacco? Yuck! Let's go to another building. We next visited the manager or the chief factor's house. Our hostess showed us the fine cutlery, probably that came over from England. Remember, these people were living in a very remote wilderness and a long ways from home. This was the bedroom. No central heating here. The bedroom was kept warm in winter by a fireplace in it. The baby's cradle was often suspended directly above the parents' bed with the ropes. Look at the small tub hanging on the wall. No big shower or big tub in here. Water was precious and hard to heat. People often had hardly weekly baths, more like monthly or even yearly baths in some cases. The main bath you had during the year might be a jump in the river or lake in the summertime. This was the wood cook stove, and look here. The chicken house was right off the kitchen, where it was always warm, even in winter. That stick platform on an angle that you see there is called a roost, and the chickens sit or roost on it. Why was the chicken house near the kitchen? Well, everybody knows that. Chickens will not lay eggs if they are cold. And I wanted to show you this beautiful artistic work by the Carrier people. It's really beautiful stuff. And I glanced above my head and I was reminded that it is summertime. The snowshoes are stored up in the rafters. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that show, and if you did, if you would hit the subscribe button. That helps us bring more videos and support our channel here on YouTube. So until then, we're rolling on. We'll see you down the trail. So long for now. This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. Don't bet on those white chickens.